Namaskar. Hello and welcome. Happy Janmashtami to you all. Today, on the auspicious occasion of Janmashtami, NMO Bengal and Vitasta Publishing present a healthy discussion on Krishna, myth or reality. So, without wasting any time, let's begin. Myself, Anirban De, I am joined by two most eminent speakers and thinkers on this subject. I have with me Mr. Nitin Sridhar. He is a renowned author, speaker, commentator on religion, politics, and society. He has authored a book called Menstruation Across Cultures. I have with me Aditi Banerjee ma'am. She is a famous novelist, practicing attorney in USA, a well-known speaker about Hinduism and Hindu-American experiences. She is famous for her book, The Curse of Gandhari. Welcome, ma'am. Our today's discussion topic is Krishna, myth or reality. Well, why we need this? Because Krishna is the most controversial god, and there has been a lot of character assassination on Krishna, and particularly in this age where fake WhatsApp messages are forwarded every now and then, the time has now come to grasp Krishna's real philosophy. Whenever we say Krishna, an unknown smile travels through our face. Indeed, he is the most notorious god, worshipped as Bal Gopal, Murlidhar, Giridhar, Natwallal, and many other names. There is a lot of controversy on his historicity too. Some believe he is a historical figure, some believe he is a mythical figure, no need to add history in it. Some scientists say that Mahabharata happened 5,000 years ago and Krishna lived during that era. And some say, let him be in people's emotion, no need to add history and mythology together. Even some mythological texts differ. Okay, Krishna is mentioned in different forms in different texts. In Chandogya Upanishad, Krishna is the son of Devaki who received spiritual wisdom from a yogi. While in Mahabharata we see Krishna as Dwarkadhish. In Vishnu Puran, he is the flute bearer and lover of gopis, whereas in Bhagavad Gita, he is the supreme lord. So my first question will be, who is Krishna? And what is the first thought arise in your mind when you say Krishna? Nitin sir.
First of all, thank you for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here. So to straight away jump to your question, it is true. Whenever we hear the name Krishna, the first thing is, not just Krishna, I think all Hindu devatas, we naturally, there is a smile on our face because for us, the devatas are not somebody sitting atop some, heaven or something, but they are our family. We relate to our devatas as our children, as our parents, as our lovers, as our husbands and wives, and so much so. So, to your question, who is Krishna, right? I don't think anybody can say that they are competent to describe Krishna in full, because Bhagavatam says Krishna is Bhagavan Swayam. So he is the very manifestation, very personification, he's the Brahman itself, he's the Ishvara himself. So he's infinite, he's Satchidananda Swarupa, right? So, I mean, I know all these terms are a little bit, for those who are not familiar, it may sound heavy, but the point is, he's infinite. We cannot describe him in full. We can only try to describe him to our capacity, right? So, as you said, we know Krishna as a Venugopal, as Murari, as Jagat Guru in Krishna, as Yogeshwara. So many forms are there of Krishna, and different person connects with different forms. Some connect with his children form more, some with a form of a guru, right? So the point is, whatsoever form you connect, the Krishna is a reality. Krishna himself is reality, and Krishna alone is reality. The Brahman is the alone is reality. So all this, those who too much indulge in the questions of historicity, etc., they often miss this they miss the forest for the trees, I would say, because they miss the fact that it's not a question of historical truth or not. It is a question of what is real and what is unreal. And there is only one reality, one Nitya Vastu, that is one eternal entity, which is Brahman. And this Krishna, what we call as Krishna, is non-different from Brahman. It's a substratum of the universe. It's the only reality that exists.
Very well, sir. Aditi ma'am, the same question goes to you. What is the first thought of Krishna when you say Krishna? How do you describe Krishna?
Sure. First of all, namaste and happy Janmashtami to everyone. I'm very delighted to be part of this discussion with both of you. So the one word that comes to my mind when we say Krishna is Sampurna. So we know he is the Sampurna or complete total avatar. But I think it also describes the nature of Krishna in that he is infinite and he is everything. So we tend to, as both of you said, we tend to love him in parts. He's the child of Yashoda. He's the one who delivers the Gita. He's the mastermind of the Mahabharata war. He's the lover of the gopis. But we find it very hard to integrate and reconcile them into one. So the people who like the Krishna of Srimad Bhagavatam, the Krishna of Raj, looking after the cows as a cowherd, they like that aspect of him, but they find it hard then to imagine the Krishna of the Mahabharata, the one who uses tricks and himself admits that he breaks the conduct of the rules of conduct of war to defeat the Kauravas. And the reason that we say he's controversial, it's not Krishna's fault. The fault is our minds have become so petty and puny that we cannot conceive of him in the whole and in the total. And that's the whole point of Krishna. Why is he the avatar for this age? Because we live in an age where you have to be many things, where things are not black and white, where you cannot just be in Raj in an idyllic world and not know that also the battlefield is there in the next step. So we're unable to understand how you could have a Krishna who is so loving towards all the cows, deer, all the animals of Raj, and yet who exhorts Arjuna to fight a terrible war. Because we think the two cannot be. But the point is that he is upholding dharma with a capital D, which is situational, which means you don't get attached to any positions or fixed views or fixed identity. In the moment, you do what is right for that moment, without concern, without restraint. And that's why he's the avatar for this age. That's why he's the Sampurna avatar. And instead of trying to resolve controversies that don't really exist, we have to make our minds prepared and ready to maybe not understand Krishna, but at least respect him and conceive of him as he was meant to be conceived and understood.
Okay. My next question will be, is Krishna historical? Did he really walk upon this earth? And if so, what was the timing? In recent years, there has been a lot of discussion about the historicity of Mahabharata. There have been excavation of Dwarka by Professor B.B. Lal. He is the ex-chairperson of ASI, Archaeological Survey of India. Besides that, there have been a lot of research going on with the help of planetarium software, which predicts what would have been the astronomical situations of Mahabharata, which predicts that Krishna walked upon this earth around 3000 BC. But I know many people think that Krishna is in our emotions. There is no need to have historicity proved. So, what is your belief, Nitin sir?
Okay. I would take a little time to answer it. So I have two answers. One is, you are right, there are a lot of researchers going on, a lot of people dedicating a lot of time. We have found the lost city of Dwarka and the dating is pending, I think. And a lot of astronomical researchers, and no two-person actually agrees, right? So, so this is something I think this is very problematic. I think the question itself is problematic here because let's understand what is when we speak about historical Krishna, we are speaking about a particular discourse of history, a particular way of doing history, which is based on archaeological and other evidences. But let's understand. Let's get it one thing clear: that no archaeological evidence, no astronomical or any kind of evidence can actually prove that Krishna was there, because that evidences are in themselves very they are limited, they are inapplicable to the question of whether Krishna was there. Yes, the answer is Krishna was there. Was Krishna in a human form? Yes, Krishna was in a human form. But how do you know? The source of knowledge for this is not in the archaeological evidence, is not in the astronomical evidence. I am not saying that those who are dedicating their life to it are wrong. It's their prerogative. But in my view, the only proper way, the only authentic source to know about Krishna is our Itihasa Puranas. Why? I'll just digress. This is a very important point because people don't understand it. So we speak about Krishna as an avatara Purusha. Who is an avatara? The avatara is, by definition, avatara is a divinity in a human embodied form. A divinity, the Brahman, the ultimate reality, when it manifests in the human plane, in the physical plane, it is called as avatara. It is the descent of the divinity, right? So the only way this can be known is through the Shastras. Shastras are textual sources. And I will quickly, I'll make a point on this. See, in the Hindu philosophical tradition, there are largely 6 authentic sources of knowledge. Pratyaksha, Anumana, etc. These are what is called direct perception, rational, thinking, and inferences, and all those things. But none of them, except for what is called a Shabda Pramana, the textual sources, can actually prove to us that Krishna was there. The only thing that can actually prove that Krishna was there was what is called as Shabda Pramana. Shabda Pramana is the text as a valid source of knowledge, and it is on this basis that Mahabharata, Idihasa, the Puranas are written, and that is why we don't need to actually prove what is written in this text. Their texts are self-valid as long as they cannot be disproved, and they cannot be disproved by other sources, right? At best, an archaeological excavation revealed that there was a city, and we may correlate to Dwarka, we may correlate to our textual sources, but they cannot in themselves prove that Krishna was there, for example. So we have to understand Shastra Pramana, and we have to give credence to Shastra Pramana, that we have to ingrain in ourselves that Shastra Pramana is a valid source of knowledge in Hindu philosophy, in Hindu thought process, and we should ingrain this understanding into our thought process, because in schools we have been taught that only this so-called scientific evidences, the modern way of doing is the only way to gain proper knowledge. This is incorrect. In Indian tradition, we have 6 sources of valid knowledge, and Shastra is one of them, and that is the only. So because Mahabharata says Krishna was there, because Bhagavatam says Krishna was there, Krishna was there. Krishna is real. So we do not need any other sources other than this to prove that Krishna was there.
Okay, very nice, sir. Aditi ma'am, how would you like Krishna more human form or a more godlike?
So a few different points here. First, if you use mythological in the appropriate definition of the word, by which I mean the original Greek term, then you could say that Krishna is mythological. So the word myth itself comes from mythos, which is a Greek word, and that word comes from the Greek word mio, which means to teach or to initiate into the mysteries of life. So the way that Homer would have used that word is he tells stories, the epic stories of the Odyssey, etc., to teach people about the truth of life and human nature. And then mythos becomes a set of tales, or not tales, stories that are passed on orally transmitted among people that contains a system of beliefs unique to those people. In that term, in that context, that would be the appropriate term for Krishna. The problem is that in the modern age, myth has come to mean false or fictional. You have mythbusters or myths about this, which just means false or fictional. So therefore, we cannot use the word myth or mythology for Krishna in the present context. Then you come to the point of, is he historical or something else? I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. I do think there's evidence for his historical presence and the like. But the point is that this was a question that traditionally did not trouble Hindus or Indians. This is a new question that's coming about. There's an interesting book that I read many years ago, written by a Westerner about Krishna, and in the introduction, the scholar says, if you told a Christian that Jesus never existed, in a moment his or her faith would fall apart. However, if you say the same to a Hindu, that Krishna never existed, they would just shrug it off. And then she was marveling, how is it that after thousands of years of foreign rule, Hindus haven't given up Krishna or Hinduism? She was saying this as if it's a bad thing. Of course, it's a good thing. So the reason is that our conception of what is real or what is false is not based on whether something happened in some finite period of time in the past. It's based on, is something nitya or is it anitya? And in fact, if something happened in the physical world that had a finite end, it happened in the past, then actually that means that thing is not nitya. It's transient, and it's not permanent. It's not eternal. So the way that we would judge reality is, can Krishna be real to you? So when Swami Vivekananda went to Sri Ramakrishna, he kept asking all of the religious leaders in Bengal at that time, have you seen God? And in that, the question is implicit: if you've seen him or her, then I will be able to as well. So the question we should ask is, can Krishna be real to us? Not just some story that I've read, but I know Krishna. He is as real to me as my family, even more so. And this is what our Shastras and what our tradition promises to us. If you follow the practices of bhakti, if you read the Puranas with Shraddha, then Krishna will become real to you. And not as a product of your emotion, the way if you read Harry Potter, I have a relationship with Harry Potter, but that's like a figment of some author's imagination. That's not going to transform my life. I'm not going to have a relationship with Harry Potter that is going to take me to moksha or make me grow and develop. So when we say real, what we mean is Krishna is real. If you do japa of Krishna's name, it will transform you. You will have a relationship with this devata, not just Krishna, but all of our devatas. And that is not just some figment of your imagination. People around you will be able to feel the presence of Krishna through your connection with him. It becomes reality, not just in your own head, but a living reality that others can also experience and benefit from, and that can be transmitted. And that is really the only question that traditionally mattered to us, and that is what we should focus on.
Can I add one thing? Can I add one thing to what Aditi ji has said? So see, the lot of people think our texts are just like a fiction. She gave the example of Harry Potter. So Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings and all. See, that is not so, as she rightly pointed out. See, in a fiction or a fantasy is an account of one's imagination. But our Itihasa Puranas is a revelation of divine activities through the rishis. So it's a revelation as against imagination. Second point is, while in a fiction, it's completely at the level of imagination, but in the Itihasa Purana genre, what it does is, it breaks down the division between the objective reality, the transactional world, and the imaginary frame level of reality, the pratibhashika, what in Vedanta is called as Vyavaharika and Pratibhashika. It breaks down this wall between these and instead creates a text which itself is a universe. See, I am quoting Dr. Vishwa Adluri here, and he beautifully says the text like Mahabharata, it breaks down the wall between the transactional and the imaginary, and thus helping us to transcend both by recognizing that there is only one reality, the substratum of everything, which is Brahman. So for the Itihasa Purana, the reality, the why Itihasa Purana is true, it is because the truth or the reality is given by the manifestation of Brahman as Ishvara, as Devata, as various avatars in these texts. So it is not about historical accuracy or historical inaccuracy, but the concern here is the Itihasa Puranas are true because there is divine in it, because there is a descent of divine into the textual universe, because the texts make these divinities very near to us. It makes the pratyaksha, it makes our devatas pratyaksha, wherein we can interact with these devatas, and that is why our texts are real, and that is why the texts are shastra pramana, the valid source of knowledge. And because this mindset was very deeply ingrained in our tradition, we were not concerned with the so-called historical questions. It is only because in the last 200 years, the historicism, the particular narrative of historicism, particular way of doing history has gained currency, that today we are faced with these questions like Krishna myth or history, right? See, the 300 years back, if you had asked any bhakta on the street or any high-fi scholar who has studied the Bhagavata or a Shastra scholar or anybody, they would laugh at this question, because for them, that question is meaningless. The question is itself, you create a problem with a question and then try to solve that problem. Yeah, and just a short comment. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Let's take a simple question. On a lighter note, ma'am, Krishna is incomplete without Radha, and we see in earlier texts in Mahabharata there is no mention of Radha. After the Bhakti movement, we see Radha is being, administered with Krishna. Everywhere, Radha Krishna. They say Radha is Adha without Krishna, and Krishna is Adha without Radha. So, what's your take on it? Is Radha real?
Yes. So this is the question that I see a lot, and it's a complicated question, and this is where, as Nitin was also saying earlier, if you don't have a clear framework for understanding these things, it can be very confusing. It can be very corrosive. So I will start in my own path, in my own sadhana. This was a question that used to trouble me a lot. Because it is true that if you read the Mahabharata, if you read the Srimad Bhagavatam does not talk about Radha. She's not specifically named there. And it really bothered me that if in the, let's say, the original accounts of Sri Krishna, if Radharani wasn't there, is she like a later interpolation or something that got added that was, again, some poet's imagination or something like that? And now you see there are a lot of people, just yesterday I saw discussions of this, who say, oh, we have to rescue the original Krishna from the later myth of Radha and things like that. Now, the way that I would say Radha is real, again, I wouldn't go to history or is there some original Krishna versus a later Krishna or things like that, which you cannot really resolve. So there's the Shastras, there's the text, as Nitin was saying, and then there's also the Sampradaya and Paramparas, and then there's the Acharyas. So in my sadhana and in my bhakti, I can definitively say, yes, Radharani is real. That's not something I have faith in. I know that through the experience of my sadhana. She's very real for me. But now, how do I know that what I'm experiencing is itself a valid experience? To be valid, it shouldn't just be valid for myself. It should be repeatable for other people. It should have some independent legitimacy or validity. And the way that you know that is there are established sampradayas and paramparas that worship Radharani along with Krishna. And the bhaktas who follow those traditions also experience the sweetness of Radha Krishna. And it has taken them to the heights of spirituality. It hasn't degenerated into something sordid like some people allege. it has also taken them to the heights of bhakti. And Osho, Bhagwan Rajneesh, once said, and there's controversy about him, but he also said a lot of correct things. So he said, it may be, just to paraphrase him in his book on Krishna, he said, she may not have been there in the beginning, but now all that remains is Radha, and in the end, she will still be there. She will have outlasted them all. So that itself is a testament to her reality. And so if you look at there are revered acharyas, the sampradayas, paramparas that are ancient that also worship Radharani. If you go to Vraj, if you go to Vrindavan, the homeland of Shri Krishna, all you will hear is Radhe Radhe. So that is really all we need to know. That Radha is true and real. And I'll also say, for someone who's a genuine seeker, these kinds of debates in and of themselves can become very corrosive. So when I was first starting my sadhana, these kinds of questions or doubts really tormented me. And if I read something that attacked Radha, it really bothered me. And one thing we have to be careful of when we have debates is there's an intellectual debate that we should always have. We should always remember that at the other end, there's someone whose sincere beliefs are at stake. And we must always be respectful and sensitive about that. Because as a bhakta, nama aparadha, or insults of the name, or insults of the devatas, are extraordinarily damaging psychologically. And we have a responsibility in our discourse and dialogue to be very sensitive to and respectful of that. So that's what I would say.
Okay, let's take the most controversial question. Everybody say Krishna is a womanizer. He married 16,000 wives. Okay, so let's take that question. We know that he's rescued those girls from Narkasur, the king of Pragjyotispur. But still, there are historians, there are critics who always say Krishna is a womanizer, and very badly they characterily assassinate Krishna. Okay. So Nitin sir, what's your take on this? Was Krishna a womanizer?
See, if we have to, if the point is, these allegations come because of selective reading of the text. See, they are reading the text which says Krishna took 16,000 wives, right? He basically actually saved them from the Rakshasa, right? Narakasura. But they forget to read that same text. They actually ignore when the same text says that Krishna simultaneously existed as the husband of all 16,000 wives. That is, he manifested himself in 16,000. See, this is what I call as selective reading, and every modern scholar indulges in this, unfortunately, because this is the problem. This is again modern Hinduist problem. They try to divide the text into historical portion and mythological portion, and this division completely distorts the message of the text, completely distorts the essence of the text, right? See, we have only one source of knowing what actually Krishna did or did not do. And that source is saying that Krishna married 16,000 wives. But the same source is also saying that he manifested in 16,000 forms and he was as a husband with each person, each of those wives, right? So as far as those individual ladies are concerned, they were living with Krishna. They had this husband-wife relationship. So when you understand this from this perspective, the question of womanizer, the allegation simply falls away, because Krishna is doing something amazing, something impossible to mortal humans. I and you cannot manifest ourselves in 10 different forms. Forget 16,000. We cannot manifest ourselves in 2 or 3 forms and marry people. Second point, even if we remove this, Krishna manifesting in many forms, consider this. Monogamy, Krishna married the 16,000 women. He married them. The key is the vivaha, marriage. He did not keep them with him. So he is not a womanizer. There is a marriage, and marriage is a sacred act. And this notion of imposed monogamy as a virtue, this is a recent phenomenon, again rooted in Christian West. Okay. So all the ancient world, not just India, across the world, all ancient societies had polygamy, and polygamy was accepted norm, accepted way of life. That doesn't mean that every person married many people. There were also polyandral communities which practice polyandry, but even there, it does not mean that every woman married many men. See, the point is there was no moral judgment attached to monogamy per se, okay, or to
So
polygamy,
there was
right?
one more conception that when Jarasandha attacked Mathura, Krishna fled to Dwarka along with his Gopalas. So it is said that at that time Krishna became militarily very weak. So to build militarical, some alliances, he married women from 8 Mahajanpadas. It is also said he married the princess of Gandhar and also from 8 major Janpadas of India. So that might be one more point, I guess.
See, I was responding to 16,000 women that you said. See, of course, I mean, most of the political alliances, they had this political aspect. I mean, it was inevitable in a pre-colonial society. The kingship form of governance. You marry, but Krishna also married for love. So the point is, whether he married for love, he married for political reasons, he married to save the women, he, being the Purushottama that he was, he did his marital duties to each of them, and he did it fully and he did it fully dedicatedly, and that Krishna alone could do. I think we should not make this issue into a one of morality at all. See, that is a wrong way of reading the text. In fact, the right way of reading the text is to be mesmerized. Yes, yeah.
Can I add some thoughts?
Go ahead.
So, if you say that did Krishna have multiple romantic relationships with different women, either the 16,100 wives or the Vrindavan, as a factual matter, yes. Does that make him a womanizer? No, because a womanizer means I have lust or I have desire by which I need to have a lot of women, and I have this moha. Krishna had none. When it was time for him to go to Mathura and defeat Kamsa, he never looked back once in Vrindavan. He never missed the gopis and said, "Oh, they must come to Dwaraka because I cannot live without them because I am being ruled by lust and desire." It was never like that. He's Sampurna. That means everyone is attracted to him. All the women that he had, whatever romantic connection with, they wanted to be with Krishna, and because he's Sampurna, he was able to reciprocate that for them. It is actually a sign of the grace and love that Krishna has for his devotees, that in whatever form they wanted him to interact with them, he took that form, and he had no compunctions about that. That's not something that Sri Rama was able to do because his nature was different, and he was so monogamous that even after Sita was in the forest, he had to have a wife to sit for yajna rather than take a human wife, a second wife, as his Vasishtha and others advised. He just had a pratima made, a statue of Sita made, and used that. So that is one ideal. And then the other ideal that you have is Krishna, who does not say no to anyone because he has no hang-up. And this is not driven by his desire. He's responding to what those around him needed and wanted from him. So people talk about the story where he steals the clothes of the gopis and hangs them on the trees. They're in the river. Is it that he wanted to ogle them? No. The point was that for the gopis, this was like the last test. Can you come out of the water and be naked and be fully yourself in front of Krishna? And they had that kind of shraddha and sharanagati onto him where they were able to do that. Most of us cannot. We have our pretensions, we have our egos and things like that. We're not able to drop them and be naked to ourselves, let alone our Ishta. But that was the love that the gopis had for Krishna. And again, these kind of stories just show the degradations of our own minds and are not really a reflection upon Krishna at all. So this is where we have to really qualify ourselves to understand Krishna rather than making these kinds of characterizations.
Ma'am, you have written a book on Gandhari.
I just wanted to add.
Okay,
One
okay.
quick point to what Aditi said. Yeah. See, the lot of the problem happens because people do not read the text carefully. The Bhagavatam in the Gopi episode clearly says that those gopis were doing many months of particular Katyayani Vrata with a sankalpa to have Krishna as the husband. You know, they wanted Krishna as a husband. So it is in response to that, as Aditi said, it is in response to that sankalpam, that sadhana, to fulfill that, Krishna had to take the test. You know, it is not it is in fact a kind of a statement. If somebody is doing sadhana as a ishta, as their husband, then they have to get over their sense of shame. You know, as long as they have that lajja, the shame in their mind, they cannot complete their bhakti. They cannot reach the goal of the bhakti. I think the careful reading of the text is needed. Yeah.
Okay. Ma'am, you have written a book on Gandhari and Gandhari cursing Krishna. Uh, I mean, Krishna, if Krishna was God, wasn't he responsible for Mahabharata war? I mean, he could have saved those people. This was the argument given by one sage, I think, in Mahabharata also, when Krishna was returning from Kurukshetra. And also, these days, some intellectual people, they say, if Krishna was God, why didn't he save them? Why did he let that happen? And what would you say about Gandhari cursing Krishna?
Yeah, so that is also actually the argument that Gandhari makes. She says, you know, we are ruled by our petty desires. We are just mere humans. Actually, what happens? She has a divine vision of the battlefield, and she names all of the people who have perished, and she lays all of that at his feet. And she says, you have caused this. You've caused all these mothers to be lost their sons, these wives to be widowed. You could have prevented this. So again, it's a complex thing because the Mahabharata war is very destructive. There's not really like a happy ending at the end of the end of the war, but it is a war that had to be fought. Now it's not a war that had to be fought because there was some rift between cousins and there was a dispute over land and things like this. It's a dharma, and it is also the passing of the earth from the Dwapar Yuga to Kali Yuga. And there's also, so there are many different reasons that the war had to come to pass. One was on the simple thing of restoring righteousness in that particular situations within the Kuru. The other was to show that when Draupadi had been disrobed and humiliated and wronged in the court, and no one had stood for her, that had to be avenged. That could not be let to pass. And also that Arjuna in that moment, because of his attachment to his family, because it's not a glorious war in that moment. It's not something he wanted to fight, but he still had to do his swadharma. So these things are lessons for us on how we are to act in a world and in an age where things are much more gray than black and white. And also there's the idea that because the ages were changing, the great heroes and the giants of that age, like Ghatotkacha and others, they also had to be removed from Earth to basically usher in the new age, the way that in like Lord of the Rings, the age of the elves goes to the age of men and things like that. So that was really Krishna's role. It's much more complex than just this argument. But he also accepts. So when Gandhari curses him, he accepts that curse because that actually fit in with his plans and what was the eventual end of the Yadavas and everything was going to be. But he also turns it back to her and says, why are you cursing me when you yourself said that the war will be won by the righteous? So you yourself knew that your sons could never win this war. And I think the larger part of this is, yes, Krishna was the Sampurna avatar, but we still have karma, we still have our purushartha. And if you look at all the different variables that went into producing the war, it wasn't caused by Krishna. You could also say it was caused by Bhishma, when he made the vow that he would never marry and have children, which set up this whole succession problem to begin with. You can take any character from the Mahabharata and you can trace through the threads of their actions, their decisions, and all of that, which culminated in the war. So it's a much more nuanced and complicated question than simply to say, if Krishna was God, how did he allow this to happen? Because in our tradition, we still have free choice, we still have karma, we still have will over our decisions and our actions. And in the carrying out of that war, there were many lessons for us to learn and to remember today. And then he was teaching us through the example of the war what it is to practice dharma, which can be difficult to discern, which can be subtle, which is harder to understand in our day and age. But we have to understand that. So the example of Sri Rama and the Ramayana, we have to study that. Actually, you have to study that first. They always say you should understand Sri Rama before you can understand Sri Krishna. You have to have the ideals of the Marya, the Purushottam, and have that grounding in karma. But then through the Mahabharata, the Krishna of the Mahabharata, you understand how much more nuanced and complicated that is, and then we have to be open to that as well.
Nitin sir, if Krishna was God, why did he save Mahabharata war? Why did he let that many destruction, that many people to die?
See, I think again, I would say those who make this argument, their question itself is framed wrong. See, they are imposing their expectation of what a so-called God should be on the Bhagavan. See, this is the problem. See, what is universe? Universe is not stagnant, right? So universe is a cycle of Shrishti, Sthiti, and Laya, right? The creation, maintenance, and destruction. So it is a duty of Ishvara to as much destroy things as it is to create things or maintain things. Without destruction, there is no new creation, right? So so from this perspective, what Krishna did cannot be faulted at all, because he was doing what is right for the Srishti as a whole. And we cannot judge it based on our expectations that this has to go this way or that way, right? Secondly, in the Mahabharata itself, as Aditi said, one of the purposes of Krishna's avatara was to bring in the change of the yuga. And this change cannot happen without destruction. You build something new only by destroying what is existing. The existing institutions, the existing structure has to go. And I think there is a clear reference in the text which says that Krishna's one of the purpose was bharavatarana, to unburden the burden that the Bhumi was carrying, to lighten her burden. So one aspect of his purpose was definitely to bring in destruction, remove the unwanted elements, remove the Rakshasas, the Asuras that he killed in his childhood. Similarly, to cause the destruction of the existing system. But if we are speaking purely from a political sense, we see that in Mahabharata, Krishna does try to prevent the war. He does not he does not advise anybody, not even the Pandavas, to just go and wage the war in revenge. See, the war is called as Dharma Yuddha because it was fought for the sake of Dharma and as a last resort. Yudhishthira goes and asks for 5 villages, and that action had approval of Krishna. In fact, Krishna himself goes there as the Shanti Duta, right? So you cannot, even on a very merely superficial, literal basis also, you cannot fault Krishna, because the war was the humans their own doing. It was the doing of the Duryodhana brought the war upon himself because of his greed, because of his ego. So Bhagwan, Bhagwan, the intervention of Bhagavan is not for the sake of one person or two person. It is for the sake of entirety of Srishti and for upholding of dharma. And so this expectation that he could have prevented war to save lives is very superficial, because that is not his purpose. Humans brought that war on themselves. The Kauravas brought that war on themselves. Yeah.
Okay. Welcome, Jagannivas sir. Let me introduce you.
Namaste.
Jagannivas sir.
Namaskar. Sorry, my apologies. My apologies. Okay, very briefly, I am Jagannivas here, a co-author of Krishna Raj. I've been on this discussion. I have been watching and hearing you all, and thankfully I have been able to connect now. Please do continue.
Sir, some background noise is coming. Okay. Sir, you have written a book on Krishna Rajya. What is your thought on Krishna Rajya?
Yes.
And how is it different from Ram Rajya? And what should be your ideal, Krishna Rajya or Ram Rajya?
Why should there be a choice between both? Why is it an either or kind of thing? Ram Rajya is the ideal state which all of us aspire for or should aspire for. Krishna Rajya is the state as it is, a state based on real politics, which is what Shri Krishna strove for all his life. I hope I'm audible and clear. Please let me know.
Yes, sir.
Everyone, I hope I'm audible and clear. Please do let me know.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay. So there does not have to be
Sir,
a
how do you
choice
see
between Ram. Pardon, sorry.
Okay. How do you see diplomacy of Krishna?
How do I? Can you come again?
How do you see diplomacy of Krishna? He's a good diplomat, you know.
Well, the diplomacy of Krishna was based on, I'm sorry I've lost you all, Krishna's diplomacy was based on politics and statecraft as it existed and as it had to be changed according to the tenets of dharma. Very brief. That in brief was Krishna's diplomacy, which also included war. The need to make war or the need to go to war whenever necessary.
Yes, sir, what do you think? Exaggerated history has become mythology, or mythology or history are two different things?
Does this particularly apply to our itihas? Does this apply particularly to our itihas? I have to ask you. Is this in the context
I'm
of...
just arguing it. I'm just trying to present other perspective. People say that exaggerated history, I mean, while fanaticism, while imagination has become mythology. History plus 90% history, 10% history and 90% fantasy becomes mythology. So what's your take on this?
My take on this is brief. One has to ask on what basis do we or others who have put these queries, on what basis do they posit these categorizations? What is the dividing line? What is the criterion for anyone to say, lay down a clear Lakshman Rekha between history and mythology? What the human mind today does not comprehend or does not want to comprehend is automatically pushed into the box of mythology. Why should we be accepting of that? Yeah, I want your responses.
Okay, sir. So, let's see, in Puranas, in Ramayana, we see a man worshipping for 10,000 years. It is said that Ravana worshipped Lord Shiva for 10,000 years. And in Veda, we see a man lives 100 years. So, whom do we follow? Veda or Purana? So, Purana is imagination, and Veda is true, I mean, if we say logically. So, when logic comes, then this mythology thing Go.
Anirban, I have reservations in calling Puranas as mythology or imagination because Western scholars, I just posted a few comments on the chat. Western scholars who at times have used our Puranas for historical records and their own research. One name I can immediately recall is Vincent Smith, who has used the Puranas extensively to determine the lineage of Hindu dynasties. And he had to admit that the Puranic recording was more accurate than what he had come across earlier. So Puranas are not all imagination. Yes, over the time, with a lot of storytelling, tale telling, some mythological or fictionalized or say overblown accounts would have crept in naturally. But I refuse to dismiss them as imagination. There is much hidden in the Puranas as well.
Anirban, can I also make one comment in response to your question?
Please.
So
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Sure.
there's also in Mimamsa this concept of what's called Arthavada. So when you read something like, for example, if you have like a falashruti of reciting a particular stotra and some of the benefits that are given, they may sound exaggerated to us, or like someone living for 10,000 or tens of thousands of years. But the idea is that that's meant to be taken perhaps not literally, but to understand a particular rasa or ethos from that, that gives a sense of that. So that's a concept that's used at least by some traditions within Hinduism to interpret those kinds of statements in the.
Let me also put this.
I have one more comment.
Please.
It's definitely possible to reconcile the versions of 100 years with the versions of 10,000 years. See, we need to bring in the concept of yuga, and without that, nothing in Hindu text makes sense. We have the 4 yugas, and human capacity in 4 yugas are different. Human ages in 4 yugas are different. Human intellectual capacities are different. Everything is different. See, again, so what is true for Treta Yuga cannot be true for Kali Yuga. So this 100 years as a full lifetime for a human is basically a Kali Yuga concept. It's relevant to us. But the larger ages, for example, in Ramayana, we find Valmiki saying that Rama ruled for 10,000 years or something like that after he comes back from Lanka. And
11,000.
They have to taken it either as the Arthavada, as Aditi says, or at face value, because Rama was Maryada Purushottama Dharma Swarupa itself, Dharma Vigraha, then that is why his age was very large. And it is in Treta Yuga. So the Treta Yuga is a yuga wherein human life was very huge. We read about Vishwamitra doing tapasya for millions of years. See, the point I am saying is, we do not need to see, we have to take it as the text says, because text is the only source. We cannot cherry pick and say this is true, this is false. I think that whole quest is meaningless. It's better to take the text as they say and derive from it what is relevant to us today. And without, if the yuga framework is for precisely this reason. See, we cannot judge what was happening in Satya Yuga, for example, sitting here in Kali Yuga, because Satya Yuga was millions of years before us. So there is no way to actually examine it. Our historical methods, as I said, archaeology or whatever other fields you say, they cannot help us to conveniently answer this question. So what we are doing is, since in our present times we are seeing that human age is 60 years, 70 years, at best 100 years, that should have been true for other yogas also, which we do not know. We have no way to verify it, right? So I think there needs to be a bit of skepticism to towards this aspect also, that we should not take presentism as the ultimate absolute truth.
Could I briefly interject, if it's okay? Hello?
Yes, please.
Could I briefly interject?
Yes, go ahead, please.
On Nathan's point, let me just take it further very briefly, just as the capability of our minds and intellect today to imagine what society was, say, even 500 years ago within this Kali Yuga is pretty restrained. I mean, we cannot conceive of how society lived and acted and conducted itself 400 to 500 years ago, which is not very long back. Our intellect in how time and dimensions were in those earlier yugas, earlier it was respectively Dwapar, Treta, and Satya in reverse order, is far more constrained. I'm sure all of you will agree. We are not even capable of imagining that, let alone comprehend. So these dimensions and measurements and calculations of whether it was 11 years or 11,000 years have to be taken in that context. Now, in the Western world or the Christian world, it is accepted as a fait accompli. God created the world in 6 days. I mean, who questions that? Simply accepted. Why? Neither geologically nor scientifically possible in any way. But then there it is.
Exactly.
So,
okay. Now, very personal question to all you. Okay. Yes, sir, I will start with you. Which form of
please.
Krishna do you like the most? Philosopher Krishna, diplomat Krishna, warrior Krishna, or cowherd Krishna? Which form you like the most?
The Sudarshan Dhari Krishna, which encompasses
very well.
Krishna, the wielder of the Sudarshan Chakra. That Krishna encompasses.
Aditi ma'am.
Yes, Aditi, go along.
Ma'am, which Krishna you like the most?
To me?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so there's one particular form of Krishna that actually reconciles the Krishna of Raj with the Krishna of the Mahabharata, which is my favorite. So the story is that when the war started, there was a bird in Kurukshetra who had just given birth and was unable to fly away and leave her chicks behind. So Krishna saw the bird and the babies, and what he did is he left his shield on the battleground so that they could maybe not the shield, he left something on the battleground so that they could take shelter under that, and basically at the end of every day he would come and check on them to make sure they were fed, they were well cared for, and they were protected. So the idea that at the same time he was waging, or the mastermind behind this ruthless, terrible war, yet he was also able to so lovingly take care of these innocent, vulnerable little birds. To me, that combines together the different aspects of Krishna into a unified vision. So that for me is my favorite.
Okay, Nitin sir, which Krishna do you like?
Well, I feel a connection to 2 or 3 forms. One is the very small toddler, eating the butter, and one is Krishna with the gopikas. But if I have to take a name with which and of course Gita, Yogeshwar Krishna as well. But if I have to take a name of Krishna, which I deeply connect, is as Vasudeva. As somebody who is at the heart of the all beings, who is the innermost self. And I think at a very deeper level, I feel a connection to this form. But otherwise, yes, the baby Krishna is my favorite. The butter eating Krishna is my favorite.
Okay.
And Anirban.
Yes, sir.
Anirban, are you there? Coming back to
yes,
your
sir,
question,
yes,
Of course,
Okay.
everyone is entitled to connect with their favorite form of Krishna, but even as a toddler, in fact, before he even stepped out of his cradle and began crawling on the floor, which is what all babies do, even before that, he had taken out Putana. So even in his childhood, butter gulping, flute playing, cowherd Krishna with the
Thank you so much.
gopis and with his friends, he was still doing his job, the job he came to earth for. So we never lost track of that.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Okay, how do you see Krishna cult spreading around the world in last 30 or 40 years? Do you think ISKCON has some contribution in it, or there has been a lot of awareness of other texts by other spiritual organization? How do you see ISKCON? Yes, sir.
I have I have a pretty restrained and restricted view of ISKCON, although whatever awareness of Krishna has spread in the Western world, well, ISKCON has had a role, no doubt. But on a personal level, my view of ISKCON will be pretty restrained. We can have another session and another program on that. But yes, not to discount Krishna, but
Okay, sir. Nitin, sir, ISKCON has made many devotees worldwide, be it European Union or America. How do you see that?
See, I think all institutions by nature, they have their positives and negatives, right? So I, being an Advaitin myself, so I have a doctrinal differences with ISKCON's or Gaudiya Vaishnavas Achintya Bheda. But keeping that aside, doctrinal difference, ISKCON has done some fundamentally very good work outside of India, especially. And so, and even in India, they are doing some very good projects like Akshay Patra and all those things. But of course, again, I have some reservations regarding their view on certain aspects of philosophy, certain aspects of achara. But I think, they have a place in Hindu system, Hindu society, just like different sampradayas. They're part of the one of the sampradayas. That is how I see ISKCON.
Thank you, sir. Aditi, ma'am, how do you see ISKCON and its spreading worldwide?
So, like Nitin, I'm also Advaitin, so I'd be called a Mayavada personalist rascal by Srila Prabhupada. But I am actually a big devotee of ISKCON. I can never belong to ISKCON because I have those same differences. I'm also Martha. But the reason I have so much reverence for ISKCON, if you go to an ISKCON temple and see how they do puja, for example, it's wonderful. They don't accept archana that someone can give money to make offerings in their family's name or things like that, because temples are supposed to be for everyone, for loka sangraha, not for personal things. But anyway, just the level of meticulousness and discipline and worship. So I had been to Mayapur, which is the headquarter temple of ISKCON. And after the Mangal Aarti, most temples, there's a lot of pushing and shoving, a lot of noise and people taking selfies and things like that. But it's completely silent. You have hundreds of people inside the temple, and they're all just doing their japa because they have their 16 malas of japa to do, and they do it faithfully. And Prabhupada was able to accomplish something incredible that no other sampradaya or parampara has been able to do so far, which is to take the authentic, meticulous traditions of Bhakti, of Hinduism, whether it's things like on how to make prasad, how to wear tilak, how to dress in the temple, how to do worship, elaborate rules, and yet make it to everyone. When I first wanted to learn how to do puja, I couldn't find a book or someone to tell me how to do puja. I only had Prabhupada's writings, and then I tried to adapt those. How to observe Ekadashi Vrata, things like that. So even when you find Western followers of ISKCON, they do all of the achara, all of the rites, all of the observances that many of us of Indian origin don't do. The fact that he was able to do that and take it around the world, it shows two things. One, the power of his faith in Krishna, and also the power of Krishna himself, because he's beloved universally and he has so much appeal. So there are many lessons we can take from ISKCON, and we shouldn't get too hung up on the doctrinal differences. And I actually think a lot of different sampradayas and institutions who are wondering how to stay relevant in the current age and how to gain a larger following have a lot to learn from ISKCON. If you type the name of the Gita or Srimad Bhagavat or any Hindu text, the first 50 links that you'll get are all by ISKCON people, even if it's on something that Adi Shankara wrote. Because they're so diligent about doing their work, spreading the word of their sampradaya around. And we have to have that kind of zeal and proactiveness in the other sampradayas and paramparas as well.
I mean, they have worked very organized way. Okay. Okay. Closing comments. How is Krishna relevant today? What can be learned from Krishna? And what do you think if Krishna was in Kali Yuga? Yes, sir.
If please, Aditi first.
Okay. Aditi, ma'am, go.
So Krishna as an avatar is probably the most relevant form for us at this present time. Again, I go back to what I started with, in the idea of being sampurna, being complete, understanding what is to be done in the situation when, and not being judgmental about it. And then I think in understanding that you need to have balance in different aspects of personality. It is said that in life you should follow what Sri Rama did and follow what Sri Krishna said. So while we need to study and follow and devote it to Krishna, we shouldn't think that we're going to emulate his life, because there's no path of his that we can follow. But what you can understand from Krishna is what the essence of the Gita, and how nothing in life should be shunned. That you can be in the world doing daily work and still be one with the Supreme. So Nitin had said it beautifully earlier, where you break down the barrier between the Vyavahara world and the Paramarthika world. And I think in Krishna, we find someone who is at once Bhagavan, but also interacts with us as a human being. And in him, you can find everything. So I think that essence and that ethos of Krishna, it's unique to us. It's unique to Hinduism. There's no other religious tradition in which he could have appeared or emerged. And that's that legacy, or that ethos, and that brilliance of Krishna is what we have to offer to the world. So I think we have to imbibe that essence of Krishna, bring him into our lives, and that's something we have to share with the world. So Krishna's life was full of so much pain and tribulation, but he was always smiling, and he always brought happiness to everyone's hearts. He never said no to anyone. He gave of himself to everyone. And there's something also very, very beautiful in that. So through Krishna, you get both bhakti and jnanam. And I think that is what we should all aspire for as well. So I don't have something specific to say other than read the stories of Krishna, chant the names of Krishna, feel the love for Krishna. It'll transform your life. And that is what we need to take society forward also in the coming years.
Very nice, ma'am. Nitin sir, how is Krishna relevant today?
See, I think every devata is always relevant because they're eternal. But yeah, speaking of Krishna, I think we can say, see, I do not like the word relevant here, so it's as if Krishna could
No, I
irrelevant.
was
So
telling
that
in
is
the
not true.
context of.
I would rather answer. I would rather say how we can how
I was telling in the
yeah.
context of Corona and this dark period, this depression, this Corona. How is Krishna relevant? I mean, he's always positive. He's always energetic. That was I was trying to portray. So, how do you see Krishna in that way?
See, again, I say that that relevant is not a word, correct word, I would say. I would say what we can learn from Krishna. See, it depends on two things. At what level we are engaging with Krishna as a deity, and in what level we are engaging with the philosophy, the teachings of Krishna. So both are important. So if we are engaging with Krishna at a level of upasana, so what he can teach, the path he can show, he is a Jagat Guru. See, we have this stotram, Vasudeva Vasudam Devam, Kamsa Chanuna Mardanam, Devaki Paramanandam, Krishnam Vande Jagat Guru. See, Krishna is the Jagat Guru. So he will teach us, he is the teacher who will teach each person in a different way for depending on what each person needs. So for some, he teaches Karma Yoga, for some he will teach Bhakti Yoga, for some he will teach Jnana Yoga, and for others something else. And as a we can learn from his in a political sense as so in a political way, as we were speaking about this Krishna Rajya, here, IRG has written such a wonderful book on that. So it depends on the person. And if you're specifically, I have to speak about the current, COVID and all those things. I think the one teaching that Krishna gives in Gita is the goal of being a Sthita Pragya, being a person who is dispassionate, who is unaffected by the worldly happenings. It may be good, the bad, the ups and downs, and the sorrows and the happiness. He neither becomes excited when something good or something pleasurable happens, nor gets distressed when something sorrowful happens. And he remains dispassionate. He remains at the center of the world. He remains engaged with the world, but yet he has developed a kind of internal equanimity, internal control of the senses and the mind, such that he is always unaffected by what happens in the world.
Yes, sir. What can be learned from Krishna's life? Tell me a political answer. I need a political answer.
Yes. For today, as a country, as a nation, his relevance, when I say relevance, his relevance, of course, is eternal. There's no question of that. But yes, in today's context, for us, socio-political and strategic first, and then philosophical and metaphysical. In that order, yes. Of course, he's not any ordinary deity who has, in a particular time and space, he's Purushottam, Pradhana Purushottam. So, yesterday, here to today, and tomorrow. But yes, relevant in this context, what I said. We have to draw from his socio-political and strategic doings and his message. And after that, only after that would we be able to go to philosophical and metaphysical. No use jumping that. That is very imperative in today's day.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ayyash sir, Nitin sir, Aditi ma'am. This was a mind-blowing session. Seriously.
Anirban and Aditi, thank you all so much. Nice meeting you all. Nice connecting with you all. And I hope to be
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. We missed you, sir.
Thank you so much, and good night, all of you.
Thank you so much.
Good night, sir. This Janmashtami was mind-blowing session. I'm thankful to Vitasta Publishing for organizing this wonderful session, NMO Bengal for co-hosting this event, and Think Right for being the media partner. Once again, happy Janmashtami to you all. May Lord Krishna fill your lives with positivity. Stay healthy, stay safe. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.